this is the one we get probably like Jack and the Beanstalk. If you ever, this story that the huge giant lives up, lives up in a beanstalk, lives up in the sky, and you can travel a beanstalk. I find it interesting that they have him located in the sky, almost depicting that, he's from the sky. He was from the sky, and that he was chasing Jack and the Beanstalk because he wanted to eat him. And so you kind of get some truth mixed in with a lot of this depictions, like, perhaps in their own way, trying to tell people what was going on. But some of these iams, they kind of distract me here. But that was how it was with just two of them. And so imagine tons and tons of these giant offspring, this hybrid race on Earth, these children. And they have their own cities. You'll see, beds being dug up and found and bones that are 18 feet long that these giants slept on. Jacob, when he sent the 12 tribes to spy on some of the giant cities, they came back and the 12 spies were saying, we're grasshoppers compared to these guys. They're so big, we're grasshoppers. And this was after the flood. And so you have these giant races before and after the flood, where they've always been mingling with mankind. And so today, we have the same thing. It's kind of gone underground. They said through various mutations of the human genes, being able to, through all these mutations over generations and years, that the giantism defect was perfected, and so you no longer see the giant aspect, so that these hybrids can walk amongst us as humans today, and you don't know they're hybrids. They're half human, half alien, but you can't tell that. Looking at them, they look totally normal. They look totally human. And so that's the only thing they did after the flood, was they went more so underground after Joshua and Caleb and all the Israelites defeated 18 to 20 of these cities to reclaim the land of Palestine. You don't really hear about the giant races after that. It just kind of disappears out of what we have available to read. I'm not saying it disappeared. I'm just saying what we have to read no longer brings it up, because in the Old Testament you can see these races that they overcame and fought. You have Jebusites, the Hittites, and that's why the Lord was so mad at Esau, because Esau married Hittite women, which were alien hybrid women. Esau married into that and gave up his birthright to Isaac. And so, whole thing there between Isaac and Esau, or Jacob and Esau. But that's kind of a picture. There's just so much that's there that I could spend hours on this stuff just trying to paint a picture of what our early civilization was like, so that you can get a grasp of what the truth is. Because in the last days, these Anics are coming, claiming that they were the gods, the rulers of Genesis chapter 1, who created us. And the truth is, folks, that they do have a hybrid race on Earth. But whatever race they had would have been destroyed at the flood, because the Lord destroyed mankind. Now, there were more races that sprung up after the flood, because in Genesis 6:4 says that the angels fell before and after the flood, and we know that there's giant races that were here after the flood as well as before the flood. And so, yeah, they don't have, they don't have a leg to stand on as far as we're concerned, but they're going to fool a lot of mankind into thinking they do. It's part of these last days deceptions that are coming, that there are gods, that they created humans out of test tubes. They couldn't do it. If you look at the Cro-Magnon and the Neanderthal man, the big difference between the cavemen and humans today, and they call it the missing link, is because they were made by two different creators. Yahweh, did not create the Neanderthal and the cavemen. Those were the beings created by this Genesis chapter 1 creation, these rulers who were trying to make their own humans on Earth and their own animals. And that's why you got the unicorns and stuff like that, where they were trying to create their own humans and animals on the Earth. And then you have the Lord's creation, which is Adam and Eve, which is the human race. They had no part in that. They had no part in our creation. The only thing they can brag of is putting together a Cro-Magnon man or a caveman. Okay, they had no part in this. Because even then, angels are falling, they're rebelling. God does not hold them in heaven against their will. They can fall to this day. And there's no redemption in the early days for hybrid races where there is now. And that's the biggest thing, folks. Under the Old Covenant, there was no redemption for hybrids, for children that were born half alien, and with half human genes. And so when they died, according to Enoch, they became what we refer to as demons. The Lord let them roam the earth. They became known as what we call demons. Middle Eastern nations call them jinn. And that's what they became, demons. In the New Testament, under the New Covenant, the Lord is offering His redemption to anyone, to all people, who will accept Him as their Savior and follow Him and follow His commandments, follow His ways. And so His redemption is available to these hybrids. And so that's why, it's almost like a whammy. When you start talking about the last days being as the beginning days, where 99% of populations contaminated by alien DNA, people start to freak out. What if I have contaminated DNA? Well, you know what? Only the Lord's Spirit can call you into Him. And so if the Lord is calling you, then He's calling you to be with Him, one of His. And so it doesn't matter what kind of DNA you have at that point. The Lord's calling you. He's inviting you to become one of His. Only His Spirit can call you. And so it's man's free will that will either accept or reject His calling. And so that's, some of the differences people say between the new and the old covenant, that grace replaced the law. And no, there's a lot of aspects to the new covenant. It certainly didn't replace the law of Moses. That still stands. We still celebrate His 7 feasts, His appointed times with us every year. There's just so much more available now. We have grace in the fact that it's the Lord who teaches us and leads us by our spirits in the way and how to worship Him and how to serve Him. We're no longer, the 10 Commandments aren't written on stones, they're written in our hearts. He leads and guides us into how to follow Him and how to worship Him. So there's a lot of differences, but one didn't replace the other. It just absorbed it and made it better. And so I was going to end this broadcast, at least for tonight. I could probably talk for 3 more hours on this stuff. I look at the time, it's already 8:13, and it's like, I've got so much info here. I'm going to pick it up next week where I left off. But I wanted to start a base, at least with Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2, enough to get you thinking that everything isn't the way you've been led to believe, that there is some various things there, not everything being swept under the rug. Let's pull it out of the rug and let's look at it, Let's find out what the truth is. And you can go online and do your own research between Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2, and you're going to find that it leads into a whole thing of not only of angels having hybrid races on earth and Cain having his own seed on earth, but Satan himself having seed on earth, and it just goes on and on. And these are the kinds of issues, the subjects that I talk about on my show on Tuesday nights. Some of the things I'm going to be addressing and talk about. You won't hear anybody else talk about this stuff. I mean, they just won't touch it. But my website's up on it. If there's something to talk, reveal, expose, or teach, that's what I'm here for. I'm just a Lord's servant. Whatever He wants me to do is what I'm going to do. And so hopefully in all this, He's the one that's glorified, so that we can become wiser and better servants for Him. And I'm going to wrap it up. I'll see you next Tuesday. During the week, you can go to my website any time of the day, SherryTalkRadio.com. I have pre-recorded broadcasts playing all day long, usually till about midnight. Sometimes I keep it on after just for the countries on the other side of the world so they can listen live. Until then, y'all bless everybody. I'll see you next week.